Hello and welcome to my first standard deck spotlight. This is kind of a new idea, trying to introduce a deck and talk about a deck in a video rather than in an article, and play an event afterwards with it. So let's hop right in. Today's deck is the Mardu green deck that Boggemes used to win the Toronto Regional PTQ. The deck caught my eye, first of all, because it is built and piloted by a known and accomplished player, as we all know, Boggemes. One of his strongest finishes was a Pro Tour final at Pro Tour San Diego in, I think, 2010. I'm not sure, it was in the Junt standard era. Okay, let's take a look at the deck. The deck is a very grindy, mid-rangey 4-color deck that plays everything except blue. The deck kind of reminds me a bit of Abza in mid-range before Teros rotated to some extent, like similar speed and game plan. Okay, let's take a look at the creature suit. The creatures in the deck are 2 Wasteland Stranglers, 4 Sylvan Advocates, 4 Siege Rhinos, and 4 Goblin Dark Dwellers. I really like the Advocates. A lot of decks play them, but not everyone plays 4. I really like 4. The 2/3 body early on blocks a lot of creatures in the format, and if they don't have anything to block, you can often just start chipping away at their life total, which can kind of matter between the splash damage from Crackling Doom and Siege Rhino to get them low quick enough and finish them off. Also, it has really great synergy with the 6 manlands that Kyle chose to run. They have been doing pretty well and help with the 4-color mana as well. So I really like the 6 manlands. They add a lot of value to the 26 land mana base, so you kind of get to run 6 spell lands in a deck that likes them as a spell and as a land, so they are really efficient. And Needle Spires can hit really hard with the Sylvan Advocate. I hit Ugins for like 8 damage, finishing them off the turn after they played the Ugin and minused it, for example, where 4 damage wouldn't have done it. Like, I had opponents that played an Ugin for -2 and the other day, and I just hit it for 8 and killed it. Or just hit people for 8 to raise them. And 4/5 Shambling Vents is not that easy to deal with in combat, and a 4 power lifelinker that is hard to deal with can really swing a game in your favor. And the Advocate being 2 mana 4/5 vigilance in the mid to late game is also really nice. It's like a Tarmogoyf sized creature that is early on a bit weaker and later on arguably potentially even stronger than a Tarmogoyf, given that you have the manlands in the deck. So it's a really good card, and I like having 4 to just have a way to kind of curve out. The next creature is Wasteland Strangler. It's kind of a role player. It can be pretty good or very mediocre. The 2 has made a lot of sense. It gives you sometimes something to go 2/3 in terms of creatures, or 2, 3, 4, 5 even. There's quite a bunch of creatures in a lot of decks that actually die to the trigger, so if you can enable it, it actually has a lot of solid targets in decks like Ardent Scales early on, or all the Collected Company decks, be it Rally or just Banned Company. Most of their stuff dies to a Wasteland Strangler trigger, and we have 7 enablers that set it up for turn 3. So 7 enablers for 2 Wasteland Stranglers is a pretty good ratio to reliably activate it on turn 3, given they give you a target for Sigrat before. And we even have Absent Charm to activate it off curve, so all in all we have 10 enablers. And some opponents help with enabling themselves with Delve and stuff. So it's pretty solid. It's a role player. You don't want too many of them, because as a 3 mana 3/2 against decks where it doesn't really do a lot, It's not great like against Eldrazi Ramp, for example, and stuff, or in mirror-ish matchups. But it has been solid so far. Most people don't run it, but so far I have liked it. It's another like tempo-y, another card that kind of goes well with the game plan of generating tempo and being a 2-for-1, which is really nice. Well, next off we have Sea Trino, which is an all-star and the heart of these types of deck and doesn't need much explanation. Next off we have the Goblin Dark Dwellers. There's a lot of Mardu green lists that I've seen that only run like 3 of that card, and I think that's just plain wrong. I mean, that's like not running 4 Snapcaster Mages in decks that it's good. And I think actually that Goblin Dark Dwellers is in standard probably a stronger card than Snapcaster Mage, because if you look at it, if you flashback one of these like 3 mana cards, you basically get a 2 mana 4/4 ManuS. The only downside that you basically have is that the Dark Dwellers don't have flash like Snapcaster Mage does, and you have to cast the spell right away. You can't like wait till another point in the given turn that you play the Dark Dwellers, like cast them pre-combat and then use the spell in combat. But other than that, it's basically almost a better Snapcaster Mage in a lot of cases. And especially for that type of deck and the purpose in this deck, it only has 2 and 3 mana targets, whereas Snapcaster Mage would also cost 4 or 5 mana but only be a 2/1 flash rather than a 4/4 ManuS. I think the card is just ridiculously good and ridiculously powerful and will be a staple for the entire time that it will be legal in the format. And I think not running 4 is just plain wrong. Although I could see, even though not instead of the Dark Dwellers, but a lot of lists that don't have 4 Dark Dwellers have a Chandra or 2. I could see considering a Chandra or 2, trying a Chandra or 2 on top of the 4 Dark Dwellers, but I would not want to go below 4. I think the card is just way too good not to run 4. And I have been really happy with the card so far, but yeah, Chandra seems like a potentially good fit in the deck. It's kind of a bit like Elspeth as a curved hopper was in the old Abzan mid-range deck and might deserve a spot in here. I'm not sure exactly what I would cut. Maybe one of the removal. The deck is a bit removal heavy, so it might be an option to try like 1 or 2 Chandras in the deck going forward. So on to the spells. The 2 mana spells are Silk Wrap and Transgress the Mind. Silk Wrap is still pretty good, especially now that we have so much Ardent Scales with like 4 Hangerback Walkers and some Servants of the Scale and stuff, and Endless ones. So there's like 10 targets or whatever that you can safely Silk Wrap, even though they have Drawwalker's Command. And there's a lot of decks that simply, there's quite a bunch of decks like Rally, for example, that can't deal with the Silk Wrap and have a lot of targets for Silk Wrap, and the Silk Wrap exiling actually matters because of Rally. And the same goes for Dark Jeskai. Silk Wrap is still an all-star against their Jaces and Soulfire Grandmasters, even though they usually don't rely as much on Ojutai's and Kolagan's command, which makes the exile a little less important, but it still deals with 3 of the most important creatures: Mantis Rider, Soulfire Grandmaster, and Jace. So that's still pretty good. Transgress the Mind has been pretty solid. It's like important against decks like Ramp. It's pretty good in mirror-ish type matchups. It still hits company against the company decks and all their 3-drops like Reflector Mage and stuff. And it enables Wasteland Strangler. So overall it has been pretty good. And I think it is a better main deck card overall, probably than Duress. It's a minor letdown that it can't hit Rally, but I guess you can't have it all. Duress could hit a Rally, but it could only hit Rally and Collected Company, and therefore would often like whiff, where Transgress has a very high chance against Rally to hit something meaningful in some way. Breed the Bones was a bit interesting to me actually, because it's like kind of slow and reactive, but it just like fits into the plan of like grinding and 2-for-1ing people and outvaluing them. I have been fairly happy with the card, like it's not that I was unhappy with it, but maybe one could be shaved to try and fit a Chandra, for example, because sometimes when the games don't go that well, you might end up having too many of these draw lose life cards. And I guess it could also be possible to consider just running for Absent Charm and less Read the Bones, just like the old Absent deck did, to give you a little more flexibility. I mean, sure, Absent Charm is a little worse as the draw, but it's also an instant, so it allows you to pass, see if they play a target that you can removal, and if they don't, you can just draw cards. While Read the Bones is like more narrow but more powerful as a draw spell. So 3 might be a bit too many. I could see shaving one for a Chandra or an Absent Charm or something like that. Or maybe even if Wasteland Strangler turns out very well positioned at a given point, to maybe go up to more Wasteland Stranglers, because if he's good, he's really good, and with the enabling that we have, it could be possible to support the third in the main deck that's currently in the sideboard. The one Ruinous Pass has been pretty decent. I mean, the card's not great, but there's a couple of things to kill. It kills a Flip Chase, it kills Chandra, which is pretty important, and it's just like a solid all-around removal. It kills Ugin, which is also pretty important. So it has its purposes, and so far I've been fairly happy with one. And the Awaken can matter with an Advocate or the Manlands. So all in all, I think one is fine and one in the sideboard. So you can bring it in where it does a good job, and just take it out when it's too clunky and slow and sorcery speed. Roast is a card that I'm not entirely sure how much I like it. I mean, it's pretty solid. There's a lot of like reasonable targets. There's quite a bunch of rhinos. There's these Absent blue decks with Reflector Mage. They're kind of like the other side of the coin. It's basically the modern day Absent aggro, while this is the modern day Absent midrange. So there is quite a bunch of things to roast, but the deck is a little heavy on removal, and especially if we would like cut a Read the Bones for an Absent Charm, I could see shaving some roasts. I'm not sure. Would have to play more. From what I played so far, they have been so-so, and I bought them out quite a bunch. I mean, they are good in the mirror. They are not good against ramp, so they're mostly like good in the mirror and good against Absent aggro, Absent blue aggro, basically. And they are solid against hardened scales, but they can be kind of too bad against hardened scales, and they are not great against stuff like Dark Jeskai or ramp or rally. I mean, they're okay-ish against rally, but because they kill stuff, because all the creatures die to it, but there's not that many creatures that you want to kill in the first place, or have to kill in the first place, especially without exiling them. So yeah, Roast is definitely a questionable card. Yeah, and that's just the best 3 mana removal slash spells that you can have in Mardu Green. Crackling Doom and Absent Charm are just very powerful and or very flexible cards. Crackling Doom isn't as great as it used to be because of decks like Rally and stuff, but it is still usually good enough. There's some matchups where you bought it out, like against Rally or Dark Jeskai, but it's still pretty good against Hardened Scales or in the mirror and against ramp. So it still does a pretty good job. It's just not as oppressive as it used to be. And there's still decks like Esper Dragons or Mardu Dragons where the card can be really good. And yeah, Absent Charm is just a great flexible card that always does something no matter what you need. If you have nothing to remove, you just draw cards to pull ahead on resources, and if you have a good target, you just get a very clean and reliable and efficient removal. The mana base so far has been working fairly fine. No obvious issues. I mean, the mana base can't really support Painlands, because of all the manlands, and it needs to have enough basics for the untapped lands. Basically the place where you probably would normally have like 2 pain lands, you here have like the Needle Spires. They probably would have been Battlefield Fortress beforehand. And yeah, the double swamp is a bit odd to me sometimes because you only have 4 fetches that fetch black, and you don't really need double black except for like Ruinous Pass and very few sideboard cards. So I'm not sure if the second swamp should maybe be another land, like probably another basic. But I don't know, a second mountain is a bit odd in the sense that it doesn't do much aside from Dark Dwellers. Maybe the second swamp is just here because of activating Shambling Vent, while Shambling Vent, because the deck is like doesn't have that many non-Shambling Vent black sources, so maybe you just want the second swamp for like Shambling Vent. And I guess in a lot of cases where you cast 2 spells, both could be black, so that's another reason for having a bit more black maybe. Okay, on to the sideboard. First of all, Hallowed Moonlight. Very obvious poser against Rally Ancestors, and very necessary these days. Rally is everywhere and arguably one of the best decks in the format. And this is a pretty good card. And it's even good against the banned company decks because Collected Company is or can be very brutal, and Hallowed Moonlight is a very great answer to a Rally, basically countering it for free, making them waste 4 mana in a card, and you just cycling your Hallowed Moonlight. Duress just helps against control decks and ramp and stuff, decks like Dark Jeskai, where you need some more disruption. And it's actually, as we saw, better than Transgress the Mind against a deck like Hardened Scales, because they have a lot of cheap spells that actually matter, like their removal and Hardened Scales and the Nissa, where Transgress only can hit Nissa and a few of their creatures, not even many. So yeah, and Duress is also still good against decks like Ataka Red, which are not really around much currently. Got a Wasteland Strangler for when it's good, like I said. Could see considering even putting that main deck if you expect enough matchups where it's good. The Infinite Obliteration I'm a bit skeptical about, like every black deck seems to run 1 in the board, but I'm not quite sold if it's like that good. Like what do you even name these days against ramp? Ulamog doesn't even do that much anymore naming it because they often only have like 2. I guess you could name Worldbreaker maybe, because that card's really good and really annoying, and they usually have like 4 of that, and they can even recure it if you don't kill it by exiling. But yeah, for now I'll leave it, and it also like can come in against Rally to hit their Nantuko Husk or whatever. The second Ruinous Pass that I talked about, that comes in against ramp and other decks with a bunch of Planeswalkers to kill Chandras and stuff. Like, it's pretty solid against Jeskai because it kills their Chandra and their Flip Jays, and still okay against their other creatures. It's not great, but it kills everything you want to kill against them. Kalitas is another card that comes in against Rally, and can also come in against decks that can't deal with it that well and have a lot of creatures, like small creatures that you are killing, where you probably, if you bring in the third Wasteland Strangler, you can potentially also bring in Kalitas. Plus, when the lifelink is good, you can also bring it in, like against red decks, for example. I usually have brought it in against Jeskai so far, because they can't deal with it that well, because Crackling Doom often kills something else, and they have a bunch of small dudes that actually make zombies, and exiling can be beneficial if they still run some commands. Obnixilis is just another like big value play. It comes in mostly against like other mid-rangey matchups like Sea Rhino decks. I don't like it that much against ramp because it has not much impact on the board, and I mean, maybe it got a bit better with Worldbreaker, but I still don't really like it that much. I mostly bring it in against control than like other Sea Rhino decks. This is another sweeper against like banned company and can be solid against rally, but I'm not sure if it's good enough there, and against like Ataka decks and stuff. It's kind of obvious when it's good to bring in. This is a bit similar. It's like against decks with small creatures and stuff, and or artifacts that you want to kill. Or when you want to grind like a deck with Jays. A controlling deck with Jays where you want to grind like I like it against Jeskai, for example. It kills Grandmaster and Jays and helps you grind. Either lets them discard or get back one of your great 4 and 5 drops. Not quite sure if it's that important in the board, because it's kind of a generic card, and I haven't quite figured out if there is a matchup that really makes you have to have it in the deck. But it has been pretty good against Jeskai, to be fair, so that might be one of the cases. And other Jace-based blue control-ish decks. Yeah, and well, there's Anafanza. Another hoser against Rally. Like I said, Rally is quite a big deal, and the deck is not that well positioned in the main deck against Rally, so you need a bunch of good sideboard cards. I also like to bring it in against Ramp, for example, to have a better clock and curve out. Like you can swap the Wasteland Stranglers for Anafanzas there. And generally in matchups where it's a good blocker and they have a hard time dealing with it. Like, might be even solid to bring in against Jeskai, but probably not, because we want to keep the Wasteland Stranglers there. But it might be solid enough to bring in against red aggro decks like Ataka Red. So yeah, so far I have played a bunch with the deck, had fairly good success in 8-mans. Deck feels pretty well, feels pretty smooth, grinds really nice, has a ton of answers to everything, and I liked how sleek and streamlined Kyle's list is. And aside from the few change suggestions that I mentioned, I haven't found any obvious things that I would like to change, that I was unhappy with in the deck, or that I felt were just like wrong, or deck seems pretty well built and might be improved by some minor fine-tuning here and there, and maybe trying some Chandra. Not sure if Kyle tried them and didn't like them for whatever reason, but the card just is considered the best card in the set and fits the strategy really well, so the deck might just deserve to run 1 or 2. And it has like board impact and grind value with like the sweep. It even has like a sweep ability that has immediate board impact. It has an immediate threat value with the plus, and it has immediate grind value with the 0. So it's a very nice all-purpose card that usually, no matter what you do, no matter what situation you're in, it should have a meaningful impact on the game with one of the 3 modes that it has. So yeah, I don't really see why you wouldn't want at least 1 in the deck, or maybe even 2. Yeah, that's it with the for the deck. With the deck for now. If you have any questions or suggestions, let me know in the comments. That is one of the decks that I started like working with on standard again, and I will keep playing it for a while and maybe start doing some minor changes, like the Absent Charm, Read the Bones change after I played a little more, and maybe get a Chandra in there and try a few minor things in the sideboard and see how it goes. The deck looks actually pretty well positioned, because so far it has seemed really good against Hardened Scales when I played against it, and also on paper with all the removal. And Hardened Scales was one of the breakout decks from GP Houston last weekend. So the deck seems like it's fairly well positioned. I haven't really gotten to play much against Rally online yet, so I don't know how well the matchup goes over a match. I know that game 1 is probably not that great, but there's a lot of sideboard cards, so if the Rally matchup is solid, the deck seems like a pretty good choice right now. There was also a Mardu green deck that made top 8 at GP Houston that was a bit different from this. It was less streamlined, and I think he only had like 3 Dark Dwellers and 3 Advocates and more spells. And no Stranglers and stuff. But yeah. So other people are doing well with different builds of this, and there might not be a figured out version yet. But I think Carl did a pretty good job of building a very nice, streamlined, straightforward, efficient version of the deck that I have liked quite a bunch so far. Okay, let's hop into the first round of the day. See you in a second.